Thank you. Councilor Vagaroff.
Thanks for coming in and thank you for your time. I see your guys' story as almost too cliche to be real life. You guys are the big company coming into a small town, huge opposition to the environmental impact supposedly that you guys are having, and coming to various councils with fancy looking presentations that seem to contradict pretty much every single claim conveniently that's thrown your way. My issue as an elected official, and I would hope this would be at least in consideration for anybody else in my seat on any council, would be what you stand to lose from your project not being approved or your permit being pulled or whatever, versus what the residents of Shawnigan Lake have to lose from your permit standing. And I mean, let's just say hypothetically everything that you've said, all of your true facts are true, and there's nothing weird going on, all of this is just blown out of proportion in the media. Why do you think the residents are up in arms? Do you not think that these people have anything better to do? They've raised over $500,000 in a community of 2,000 people. Do you not think they have better use of their money or time or lives?
I don't really want to debate the people that are out there protesting. And I do believe they have a right to protest. I strongly believe that, actually. And we encourage it to be lawful. But, you know, to bring up a couple of points that you've mentioned, you're making some assumptions, Councillor Vagaroff. First of all, my company... You
can call me Rob if you want.
Okay, Rob. Sorry, my name's Mizuik, so mine's a difficult one to pronounce as well. So, South Island Resource Management is 12 people. So it's not a big corporate entity. It's a local Victoria-owned company. And of that company, there are 3 technicians, 3 engineers, an operations manager, and then some operations staff. So it's not a massive, large corporate entity. And I'm not going to apologize, like any businessman in this country is not going to apologize, that we do business to make money, to ensure there's gainful employment. And yes, corporate structures are businesses that are there to make money, there's no doubt. I have entered into an agreement with an owner of a property that has a legally obtained permit. One that the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Mines have both issued permits for. The reason there are people getting arrested is because they are not being lawful, and that we are. If we weren't allowed to do what we were doing, then they would, I'm sure, shut us down, like anyone would think.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you brought up the fact that you guys are a technically legal company, and I do appreciate the fact that you bring up the permit. You know, the structure that that the provincial government uses, and this was changed in 2001, is one that I studied pretty closely. Going back to the late 70s and early 80s, when the whole concept of self-regulation was created, the idea that a company can come in, hire their own scientists, present that information to the government, and that is considered objective, is completely insane. And the fact that it exists in our political system is extremely unfortunate to the people that are affected by the actions that certain companies take. And on top of that, I do think that looking at the corporate history of this specific site and saying, well, we're no longer SIA, we're now SIRM. We're no longer SIRM, we're now CHH. There's technically 4 or 5 numbered companies that are doing all these things.
Please do not confuse my companies with like that you're mixing companies up there pretty quickly. That's not the case.
All right. So
I started an opportunity with South Island Resource Management. I have no involvement in Cobble Hill Holdings. I have no involvement in SIA. I am an operator of a company and an owner of a company that's called South Island Resource Management, and it has absolutely no involvement with those other 2 companies, other than I have an agreement to operate a landfill. And just so we're clear, that's a very common agreement. most municipal landfills have private contractors that operate their landfills. Very, very few municipalities, or governments for that matter, operate their own landfills. We're contracted help.
And if you could just let me finish on that point.
Well, you're making confusions, Rob, that I didn't want you to make.
If you let me just finish my point. My issue in the fact that there are so many legal entities involved in this, and I'm not saying that you in particular are involved in any of them specifically. What I'm saying is that...
I'm not involved in any of them, period.
Sure. Having a BC Supreme Court judge question this in the last couple days of the hearing that you guys are involved in.
I'm not involved in any...
Or sorry, you guys are not involved in, right?
No.
I get
South
it.
Island Resource Management is not a named participant in that court case.
I get it. So the point that I'm making is if a Supreme Court judge can question the, let's just say, cloud of corporate entities that are, in the words of the judge, creating a veil for certain individuals, which I'm not going to name, mostly because I don't know them. If the BC Supreme Court can have an issue with that, I can most definitely have an issue with that, and I do have an issue with that.
Well, Rob, I think it is before the court, and I think the trial started yesterday.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see how that does play out.
I will be as well. I mean, I have a legitimate awareness of those actions, and I have obviously an interest on the outcome.
Yeah, of course you do.
As we all do.
Yeah. So back to the presentation and the points you brought up, and I wanted to get to these last just because that first section of interest and conflict of interest, especially in the permitting process, was my big issue. Having the orange water, and you beat me to it. I was going to get you to have a sip of this.
Oh, thank you. Can you show that so the camera can see that?
If we can zoom in on
so
this,
that's
I'll
the
put it right
water
up here.
that's been so eloquently pointed out coming off of our site.
So my issue with this is not the color. You know, the color makes some great shots, as we saw the.
But it's a gimmick, Rob.
Sure.
Thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that you see that.
If that's the way that you see this, that's fine. I'm not looking at the color of the water. I'm not looking at the fact that there's, quite a funny actually label on here naming the Minister of Environment here, Mary Polak Springs, taste the difference, or taste the science, that's what it says. Yeah, of course it's a gimmick. It's designed to raise awareness to the cause, and the color is not the issue. The issue is what's in the water, and not what's in the water at the discharge point like you mentioned. You know, you said surely the most contaminated point is the discharge.
That is correct.
Probably,
that's the only point contaminated water leaves the site is from that discharge point.
The only water that enters your system and goes through your system and then exits the system exits at the drainage point. If by some miracle of nature, by some whatever freak storm or coincidence or crack in your plastic seal or whatever, who knows? If there happens to be a crack in your magic protective sealing that will never fail, and there is a discharge of water into a creek and it was captured, it would record extremely high levels of metals, exactly like Andrew Weaver's test results on this water.
Actually, no, it wouldn't.
Listing stuff like lead that doesn't exist naturally in the numbers that he recorded there. Substances that go from 3 to 18 times the concentration.
Sir, you're making statements that aren't accurate.
That's
and
what
so
he found.
if the liner was to fatigue or damage or crack in someone's perspective, there's a meter of clay which lasts for billions of years. It's a natural impervious layer. That's the whole point of the redundancies of the engineering. That's exactly the point and should give you the confidence that the mine should exist, and why the Ministry of Environment, that lady, as you so pointed out, her staff ensured that there were such levels of control and engineering and redundancy. These sites exist everywhere in the world. And this, in my opinion, is one of the most stringently engineered ones that I've ever seen. And that's why South Island Resource Management decided to become an operator, because we were confident in the engineering strategy that was applied to take contaminated soil.
Well, I would like to thank you for coming in today and sharing some of your time with us. I'll be honest, I mean, I'm far from convinced on most of this stuff. Guess we'll see what the courts say.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Roy?
Thank you, Mayor Clay. Welcome to Port Moody, Todd.
Thank you very much. It's a beautiful community.
Thank you. You've traveled quite a ways to get here, and I
I
must
have.
say, it's
and,
not...
and you've traveled over to visit us, I understand. So
I did. I had the pleasure of being there on Wednesday.
it's a beautiful spot.
It's not often that we have a delegation from from another place, from the island, that are representing a resource management operation. And I know in the delegation form it said, as arranged, so it was with curiosity that we welcomed you here today, that I welcomed you here today.
And we are appreciative of that opportunity. Thank you.
So Todd, why are you here in Port Moody?
Why are we here? Well, mainly because of the mistruths and the miscommunications. We are a small group of people, of staff that work diligently hard to run a very good operation. More importantly, we live in the community. My children, my partner's children, our wives, our staff's families, all live in that same community.
So Todd, I'm going to interrupt you. Why are you here in Port Moody?
Well, we're here to clarify or bring to our point the miscommunication that's out there, such as that bottle of water that is being educated in misinformation to your councillors and to your people in Port Moody through the Tri-City paper and other areas that I've read miscommunication. And so unfortunately, there's a point as a business owner that you feel compelled to make sure that people are understanding really what is happening, because there's a business, a taxpayer in your community that's also being subject to ridicule and other statements that just aren't fair. That operator, Pacific Coast Terminals, they spent a full day in our mind with arm's length hired engineers, environmental engineers, to review our process, our paperwork, how we manage the soil. They were due diligence. I commend them because they did take the time to do all the right things, all the due diligences that you would expect a professional company to do. And you should be proud of a taxpayer in your community that takes the steps. Forget about they had an issue of contaminated soil that had to go someplace. And that's kind of a bigger part that you all as citizens need to understand, that I can walk out this door and within 15 minutes of walking find a contaminated site. And that's just the truth. It exists in Port Moody. It exists in Victoria. It exists in Shawnigan Lake. It's not pristine. We are not good to the planet. And as a society, we need to understand that if we're going to dig holes, that when we displace contaminated soil, it needs to go someplace. Where is that?
So Todd, are you also visiting other communities in the Tri-Cities, Port Coquitlam and Coquitlam? You mentioned the Tri-Cities.
Well, the reason I mentioned the Tri-Cities is because of the newspaper article that was written by the Tri-City paper. Yeah, no, I do plan to communicate, and I would be happy to present to anybody, because I think it's a really important community civil issue, and I think it's a provincial matter as well that should be looked at, because maybe we're not educating our communities enough about what happens with contaminated soil, and more importantly, maybe we're not educating our children that we do need to be better to our planet, and that leaving uncontrolled contaminated waste on sites is not a good thing, and we need to bring them into a controlled environment. And without our site and others like it, I don't know how you manage controlled contaminated waste. I just don't know how you do it.
Okay, well, then let me ask you, since you are the recipient of contaminated soil, which you have said is contaminated, that has originated from Port Moody, when there's heavy rain, heavy rain in your site,
Right.
and your water treatment facility fills up, your sediment pond fills up, you've got excess water, where do you take it?
Well, no, we have redundancy in our water system. So we manage our water effectively and efficiently, and we treat it efficiently. So I guess the best and simple way to answer that is that when water rains, if it comes in contact water, we collect it. We collect it and then treat it. And then we discharge it to a bottled water level, a water drinking level.
Okay.
And that's kind of the point about the dirty water, to dispel that myth.
Okay. When I go to the landfill with a load of drywall, I need a permit. I need a permit from the municipality. I need an environmental hazard report that accompanies that.
Ma'am,
Do you investigate the contaminants coming to your site?
absolutely, we do. And just to point out, we don't take gyprock, and we're not a landfill.
Of course.
We're a soil site, right?
Yeah.
So there is a requirement in our waste approval, and that's in your pamphlets. You'll see the form. It's very complex. It does require a qualified engineering professional to evaluate the site. They do numerous sampling of the soil long before it comes to us. They classify the soil, and then they will send us that data. And then I don't take that qualified professional's opinion. I actually have my own qualified professional, but he takes the raw arm's length data that was sent to a lab, and he analyzes it so that we correlate or not to that qualified expert. If we correlate and we accept the quality of his soil meeting our permit requirements, then that soil would come into the mine site. But it comes with chain of custody forms that the truck driver has, that's signed by a qualified professional on the site. And then when that soil lands on site, not only does it get managed from the point it enters the door, we actually follow that truckload of soil, and we actually take further samples of that soil. And then we send it out to a lab, which is arm's length, so that we can also verify that the lab information of that soil, the quality and the types of elements that are in that soil, correlate to what that independent qualified professional did on his site, and that they match.
Okay. So I'm concerned. I'm concerned about what's happening here in Port Moody, and I'm also concerned about what's happening in the community of Shawnigan Lake. I understand that the contaminants coming from our community, as you have suggested, from PCT, are they coming by barge?
They are coming by barge,
Okay,
yes.
got it. And
They can come by truck, and they can come, but
Okay.
Vancouver Island is an island, so you have to pass water
Okay.
somehow.
So when this material arrives on your site, is it quite wet? Do you have to treat it when it gets there?
Well, reclamation soils to begin with, like, because we're a mine, we use these soils to reclaim the mine. That's the whole point.
So you're a mine? I thought you weren't SIA. SIA is the mine, is that correct?
No, we are the operator. So we operate the mine site, which as part of that, you are required to reclaim the mine, fill the hole back up. So when you reclaim a mine, normally you're dealing with suspect soils, geotechnically especially. So it's not uncommon to deal with tills and clays that don't release moisture well. So the whole point is that you're going to do amendments to that soil so that you can geotechnically get to our world of permitted required.
So Todd, is the product wet when it gets to Shawnigan Lake?
It can be,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay, got it. Is there a possibility that some of this could be leaked into our inlet when it is being loaded onto barges, or in the inlet as it is in transit?
Well,
Because you've already
you're
determined
asking me to
that it's
enter into a
contaminated.
hypothetical discussion. The reality is measures are taken all the time by contractors that move soil. And there are requirements in the movement of soil to ensure that soil is handled properly. And so I can't answer for contractors that are moving soil all over the province. As a matter of fact, I'm sure your bylaw enforcement officers have had to deal with muddy tires from a construction site before.
Well, I'm actually specifically talking about the material that's loaded here in Port Moody and taken to your operation.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I'm saying to you. Port Moody has numerous construction projects on it that there are soils being moved in and out and on roads and probably across bridges.
Are they being moved to your facility?
There are other clients from the mainland that definitely take soil to our
Okay.
property.
Pacific
Yes.
Coast Terminals was here just a few weeks ago, Todd, and they talked about the price that was being asked of them to receive this contaminated. They didn't actually say contaminated, but to receive this soil. And I understand that you gave the best offer, that your price for receiving it was half the price of competitors. So how is that possible when you talk about all these processes?
Well, I'm not sure what the question is.
Okay, I'm just asking, how can you afford to, to do all of this treatment the way it needs to be done when you're offering this bargain basement price?
Those are your words, not mine.
Okay, well that's what I got.
I think that we run a well-run business. Mm-hmm. I think there's been lots of oversight from government agencies and independent engineering firms that are familiar with our business, that are very comfortable in communicating that our businesses are run well. As far as price, first of all, that's confidential. Second of all, we think we're a competitive business. And I think that other businesses have the right to go after the same type of business that we do. There's many businesses in that soil business. So I have nothing to base your comments on. I think that we gave a reasonable price to Pacific Coast Terminals, and I think that they are very good, astute business people that found a very reasonable place to accept their soil. It has got more and more to do with a local business in your community ensuring that they were comfortable with the type of soil that they had based on the experts that they hired to help them find a place that was safe for their soil. And that's what we offered Pacific Coast Terminals.
Todd, you took this business in June. Did you know how controversial this was?
No, I would strongly suggest to you that, was I aware that there was opposition to it? Of course I was. I lived down the street from Tervita, literally a kilometer away, and when Tervita started 5-6 years ago, they were met with opposition on Millstream Road. But I have faith in our government, and I have faith in that operator that they're doing the appropriate things to manage contaminated soil. And I do believe that we are doing the same thing.
You know that this matter will be debated in Victoria this week.
I know it's before the courts this week, yes.
Yeah. How do you feel if a motion were to be passed that you were to cease operations?
Well, I think it would be unfortunate, mainly because I believe that would have meant the judge had information presented to him that probably would not be accurate to come to that conclusion. That would be my belief. But more importantly, I'm confident in what we're doing, and I'm confident in our operation, and I'm confident in my staff on how we manage contaminated soil in that mine. And I know the Ministry of Environment that's been out and inspected us almost on a weekly basis.
So the Ministry of Environment is there in person?
In person. And so is the Ministry of Mines as well. We should conclude that, and they don't come together. So we see usually a ministry representative once, twice a week. And we are in constant daily communication with those ministries to ensure that there's a confidence of compliance. Why? Because there's an awful lot of people phoning them that we're not.
Okay, it's my understanding that more than the Ministry of Environment, that Active Earth was involved in providing the data. I think they were mentioned.
Active Earth is not involved in our operation at all. As a matter of fact, our engineer of record is Stantec Engineering, and they have nothing to do with the ownership of the mine or Active Earth. They're
What
just
would
an
you do?
engineering firm that we work with to provide services on specific design and engineering around the mine.
What would you do if there was a leak in this, this membrane?
We would fix it.
And how would you know if there was
Well,
a
there's
leak?
leak detection pipes. So there is a leak. That's the whole point
Okay.
of the sand membrane. So there is a leak detection system. That's the whole point of the multiple layers of redundancy in the engineering.
Well, Todd, we've certainly given you the floor to talk about
And I
this.
appreciate that. Thank you.
It's difficult when we don't have both sides presenting because, as you know, we've got the elected area representative, Sonia Furstenau, in the audience today. But I appreciate you traveling, and we'll see how this story unfolds.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see, Councillor Vagermoff, we're really 55 minutes of
Yeah.
uneducated bantering here.
I
It's
know.
not getting us anywhere.
I've got one more minute of bantering for you. One question that I heard Councillor Roy ask, and I actually asked it as well, but I didn't feel like we got a straight answer, so I'll just ask it again. When or if there is too much water coming in from rainfall, and all of your steps that you would have in place to contain the water or capture the water, when all of those steps are full, what happens to additional water entering the site?
Well, we have redundancy upon redundancy in our operations plans.
I appreciate that. What
And-
happens
and-
if all of those are at capacity? Where does the water go?
Well, we're designed to a 1 in 200-year storm, so I don't perceive that as an issue.
But
Well, again, it's conjecture. So, I mean, we could have a 1 in 500-year storm, and I would suggest to you, even on a 1 in 200-year storm, all of us would not be here because we'd all be dealing with flooded basements. That being said, you're talking catastrophic water. And catastrophic water, that volume, that magnitude of water, what do you have? You have a lot of dilution. And so in the engineering principles that are applied when you do the type of engineering around contaminated soils and the movement of elements, dilution is one of those things that does get taken into consideration in an engineering position.
so in this
But-
crazy storm, it would get diluted on its way out
Well,
of the
again,
site.
we're talking in hypotheticals. I'm confident that we have the water management system in place to manage our site. What happens for somebody else's site, I really can't answer that question.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you,
thanks-
Mayor Mike Clay.
Thanks for your presentation and your answers to the questions and your patience. Yeah, apologies that people don't seem to believe your answers, and I thank you for at least trying to
No,
answer them as best you can.
and I think that's part of it.
It's not how I go through my life, but I'm sorry that you're having to deal with that. So good luck, and we'll be in touch.
Appreciate your time and